Gather round the fire, folks. I got a tale for you of betrayal, revenge, and the wild, lawless days of the Old West. The story of Jesse James and the man who brought him down. Picture this. It's a warm June day in 1892 in a dusty little town called Creede, Colorado. The kind of place where tumbleweeds outnumber people. And the most exciting thing to happen is when a tumbleweed hits the saloon door. But on this particular day, something was about to go down that would echo through history. Robert Ford, once a big shot, now just another face in the crowd, was now managing a dance hall. Little does he know, his past is about to come knocking, and it's packing heat. In walks Ed O'Kelly, a deputy sheriff from out of town. Now, O'Kelly isn't just any lawman. He's got a score to settle, and he's not here to arrest anyone. He's here to deliver some frontier justice. Ford's got his back turned, but O'Kelly, being the polite killer he is, gives Ford a friendly greeting. "Howdy, Bob. Nice day for dying, isn't it?" Ford turns around, and I bet his face went whiter than a sheet when he saw what was waiting for him. There's O'Kelly, cool as heck, holding a shotgun aimed right at Ford's chest. And just like that, boom, Ford's dancing days are over. Now, you might be thinking, why should I care about some small-time dance hall manager getting blasted? Well, this is where it gets interesting. You see, Robert Ford wasn't just any old schmuck. He was the man who killed Jesse James, one of the most infamous outlaws in American history. That's right, the Jesse James who robbed banks, held up trains, a man of Wild West legend. Some folks thought he was a real-life Robin Hood, stealing from the rich and giving it to the poor. Others, including President Ulysses S. Grant himself, figured James was nothing more than a murderous thug with a fancy reputation. But here's the kicker. After O'Kelly gunned down Ford, he became an instant celebrity. People were falling over themselves to shake his hand, get his autograph, maybe even name their firstborn after him. Why? Because he'd killed the man who killed Jesse James, and it was like some twisted game of Wild West tag. Now, let me take you back a bit to the days when Jesse James was more than just a name on wanted posters. Born in 1847, Jesse and his brother Frank grew up in Missouri during a time when the country was tearing itself apart. The Civil War was raging, and these boys didn't sit it out. Nope, they jumped right in, fighting for the Confederacy before they were even old enough to grow a beard. But for the James brothers, the war never really ended. Even after the South surrendered, these boys kept on fighting their own private war. And let me tell you, they had some seriously bad influences pushing them down that path. First up was Archie Clement, a guy so mean he could make a rattlesnake look cuddly. Clement was one of those Confederate guerrilla leaders who just couldn't let go of the fight. He kept on robbing banks and stirring up trouble long after the war was over. When the state militia finally caught up with Clement and put him 6 feet under, it lit a fire in Jesse that would never go out. But Clement wasn't the only one filling Jesse's head with ideas. His own mama, Zorelda James, was as die-hard a Confederate as you'd ever meet. Growing up in that kind of environment, with a mama who probably served her grits with a side of Confederate propaganda, it's no wonder Jesse turned out the way he did. He was breathing in politics with every lungful of Missouri air. Now, let me paint you a picture of young Jesse James. At the tender age of 16, when most boys are chasing girls and dreaming of adventure, Jesse was joining up with a Confederate guerrilla group. This wasn't your average band of soldiers. These guys were more like a death squad. They'd ride from farm to farm in Jesse's home county, gunning down farmers in their fields or homes just because they supported the wrong side. This is where Jesse James learned his trade. He figured out that he could commit unspeakable acts of violence and get away with it. And when the war ended, he just kept right on going. Only now, instead of calling it war, they called it crime. But here's the thing. Jesse James managed to stay free for over a decade after the war. How? Well, it turns out that being a violent criminal can be a pretty good career move if you've got the right PR team. And Jesse had a whole bunch of former Confederates singing his praises. To these folks, Jesse wasn't just some crook. He was a hero, keeping the flame of the Confederacy alive one bank robbery at a time. And Jesse, well, he played that angle for all it was worth. He'd send letters to newspapers, painting himself as some kind of Robin Hood figure, fighting against those dastardly Yankees who'd won the war. But even the best PR campaign can't keep you out of trouble forever. Jesse's luck started to run out when a bank job in Minnesota went sideways. He and his gang barely made it out with their skins intact. They hightailed it back to Missouri, and that's when things really started to fall apart. Frank James, Jesse's brother and partner in crime, decided he'd had enough of the outlaw life. He hung up his guns and settled down. But Jesse? Well, Jesse just couldn't quit. He went on another crime spree, and this time he pushed his luck too far. The new governor of Missouri, a fellow by the name of Thomas Crittenden, had had enough of Jesse James making a mockery of law and order in his state. So he came up with a plan. He got some big corporations to put up a hefty reward for the capture of the James brothers. Then he arranged a secret meeting with the last two members of Jesse's gang, Charlie and Robert Ford. On the morning of April 3, 1882, Jesse and the Ford brothers sat down to breakfast together. Just picture it, the most wanted man in America, breaking bread with the men who were about to break his trust. They finish their meal and head back to the living room to talk about their next big score. Now, Jesse notices a picture on the wall that's covered in dust. Maybe he's feeling domestic, or maybe he's just trying to keep his hands busy so he doesn't betray his nerves. Whatever the reason, he decides that now's the perfect time to do a little spring cleaning. He grabs a chair and climbs up to reach the picture. Robert Ford, seeing his chance, takes a deep breath. This is the moment he'd been waiting for. Jesse James, the man he's idolized, the outlaw he's tried to emulate, is standing there with his back turned, completely vulnerable. Ford draws his gun, aims it at the back of Jesse's head, and pulls the trigger. Just like that, the legend of Jesse James comes to an end. No dramatic shootout, no last stand against impossible odds, just a coward's bullet in the back while he's dusting a picture frame. It's almost anticlimactic, isn't it? But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, we're just getting to the good part. The Ford brothers turn themselves in, confess to the murder, and are sentenced to death. But remember that sneaky Governor Crittenden? Well, it turns out he had a few more tricks up his sleeve. It's pretty clear that Crittenden had made a deal with the Ford brothers at that secret meeting, and the Ford brothers were pardoned faster than you can say miscarriage of justice. Now, you might think that being known as the men who killed Jesse James would be a ticket to Easy Street, and for a while it was. The Ford brothers took their show on the road, reenacting the killing of Jesse James for paying audiences. But as time went on, people started to turn against them. They began to see Robert Ford for what he really was, a coward who shot a man in the back. The traveling show folded, and the Ford brothers went their separate ways. And that brings us back to where we started. Robert Ford managing the dance hall in Creede, Colorado, about to meet his maker at the hands of Ed O'Kelly. But what about Frank James, Jesse's brother? Well, he turned himself in after Jesse's death, spent a little over a year in jail, but never got convicted of any of his crimes. He went on to live a long, mostly boring life, dying at the ripe old age of 74. I guess crime does pay, as long as you know when to quit. And Ed O'Kelly, the man who killed Robert Ford, well, he got released from prison due to health problems. But old habits die hard, and in 1904, he ended up on the wrong side of a cop's gun after a botched burglary. So there you have it, folks. The twisted tale of Jesse James, Robert Ford, and Ed O'Kelly. A story of outlaws and lawmen, heroes and villains, where the lines between right and wrong are about as clear as mud. It's a reminder that in the Old West, today's hero could be tomorrow's victim, and the man you trust with your life might be the one holding the gun that ends it.